The story of polonium began not in a spy novel, but in a cluttered Parisian laboratory in the late 19th century. Marie and Pierre Curie worked in a drafty shed, their hands stained dark from handling pitch blende, a dense uranium ore. They sought the source of its mysterious energy, a force that fogged photographic plates even in darkness. This was radioactivity, a word they coined for a phenomenon the world had never named. Through a grueling chemical process, they boiled down tons of the black ore, isolating fractions that grew more and more potent. In 1898, they finally separated a new element, one with an intensity 1,000,000 times greater than uranium. Marie named it polonium for her occupied homeland of Poland. In a vial, it glowed faintly with a blue light, a beautiful and deadly secret pulled from stone. The Curies handled their discovery with bare fingers, unaware of the invisible storm within. They noted it made the air around it conduct electricity. They watched it burn skin and cause persistent sores. This new power was a pure, concentrated poison. But its full menace, a perfect, untraceable weapon, would remain hidden for nearly a century, waiting in the shadows of atomic science. The Curies' discovery in Paris remained a laboratory curiosity for decades, but the Second World War transformed it into a strategic weapon. Inside the secret cities of the Manhattan Project, American scientists mastered a new art. They bombarded bismuth with neutrons in nuclear reactors, transmuting it into pure polonium-210. This wasn't for research, it was production on an industrial scale for a single, terrifying purpose. In heavily guarded facilities, technicians handled the silvery grey material with extreme caution. They milled it into fine powder and pressed it into tiny pellets. Each pellet, smaller than a pea, was then sealed inside a perfect shell of gold foil. This created the initiator, a component so crucial it was called the spark plug for the atomic bomb's core. When the bomb detonated, the gold foil would vaporize instantly, allowing the polonium inside to mix with beryllium. That collision would release a burst of neutrons, triggering the nuclear chain reaction at the precise microsecond required. A weapon born in secrecy, polonium-210 had proven its devastating potential, yet almost no one outside those fortified labs knew it existed. While the Manhattan Project's polonium was sealed in gold foil, a different kind of containment was breaking down half a world away. In Moscow, during the late 1990s, a former FSB officer named Alexander Litvinenko sat in a cramped office, his voice low but steady as he dictated accusations of corruption against his own superiors into a tape recorder. The secret police state he had served was now his target. The risk was immediate and palpable. Litvinenko could feel the old system tightening around him, a pressure that forced a desperate decision. He gathered his family and fled, trading the grey surveillance of Moscow for the quiet, tree-lined streets of a London suburb. There, in a modest home, he rebuilt his life as a writer and a critic, his interviews and books flowing steadily to journalists. From his new sanctuary, Litvinenko's voice only grew louder. He detailed alleged FSB operations, named names, and became a persistent public thorn in the side of a powerful government thousands of miles away. His suburban kitchen became a studio, his teacup a constant companion as he worked, unaware that the very substance that once powered nuclear bombs would soon cross his threshold. From the shadows of Moscow's corridors of power, the story moved to a plush London hotel bar. On the 1st of November 2006, Alexander Litvinenko settled into a chair at the Millennium Hotel's Pine Bar. Across from him sat two former colleagues from his KGB days, Andrei Lugovoy and Dmitry Kovtun. The atmosphere was one of tense reunion, a meeting arranged under the guise of business. A teapot was ordered. One of the men poured. Litvinenko, suspecting nothing, raised the cup to his lips and drank. The liquid was unremarkable, but within it swirled a silent, invisible payload. He had just ingested a minuscule amount of polonium-210, a substance so radioactive that a single speck, smaller than a grain of salt, could kill a man. The alpha particles it emitted could not penetrate the skin, but inside the body they became a cellular wrecking ball. The meeting concluded. Litvinenko left the hotel, carrying the poison within him. The polonium had begun its work, its alpha particles shredding his internal tissues with every heartbeat. Back at the bar, the teapot, the chair, the very air he exhaled held traces of the substance. A ghostly signature left behind, completely undetectable to human senses, but waiting like a hidden map to be discovered. 3 weeks after that meeting in the Pine Bar, Alexander Litvinenko's body finally surrendered. He died in University College Hospital's isolation unit, his organs shredded from within. His hair had fallen out in clumps, his bone marrow had failed, leaving him unable to fight infection. Doctors watched, helpless, as a man who had seemed to have severe food poisoning withered under a mystery illness no conventional tests could identify. The breakthrough came not from a blood panel, but from a routine urine sample. A specialist at Britain's atomic weapons establishment ran it through a gamma spectrometer. The machine detected faint, telltale gamma rays, not from the polonium itself, but from bismuth-210, a daughter product created as the polonium decayed inside Litvinenko. That unique radioactive fingerprint was the first solid clue, confirming a nuclear poison was at work. The diagnosis was polonium-210. The alpha particles it emitted had torn through Litvinenko's cells like microscopic shrapnel, but they left no external radiation signature, which was why initial Geiger counter scans at the hospital had found nothing. The poison had been perfectly engineered to be silent and deadly. Only the sophisticated spectrometer, picking up the secondary decay signature, had unveiled the truth. This was a radioactive assassination. The confirmation of polonium in Litvinenko's body triggered an immediate and silent emergency. Specialists from the Health Protection Agency, clad in protective gear, moved into the hospital room where he had died. Their handheld alpha radiation detectors, usually silent, began clicking softly as they passed over the bed frame, the floor tiles, even the door handle. Every click marked another invisible speck of a substance that should not exist in a London hospital. The team followed that faint radioactive trail out of the hospital and across the city to Muswell Hill. Inside Litvinenko's home, the detectors screamed. In the kitchen, the needle spiked over a single teacup left in the sink. In the bathroom, the drain of the hand basin registered intense contamination. Polonium had been flushed away there, perhaps as he vomited, leaving a permanent signature in the pipes. This was no accident or environmental contamination. The pattern was deliberate and horrifyingly intimate. The highest concentrations were on objects only he would have touched in his final hours. The evidence pointed to a poison administered in his own home, turning a quiet suburban address into the primary crime scene in a nuclear murder. From the quiet suburban home, the radiation trail now led investigators back into the heart of London. They returned to the Millennium Hotel's Pine Bar, where Litvinenko had met Lugavoy and Kovtun 3 weeks prior. Their Geiger counters screamed as they approached a specific armchair and a porcelain teapot left on a table. The readings were off the charts, pinpointing the exact moment the poison had been poured. But the contamination didn't end at the hotel. The forensic team followed a faint radioactive signature a short walk away to a sushi restaurant called Itsu. Here, Litvinenko had met a different contact earlier on the same fatal day. Their instruments detected polonium on a wooden tabletop and, with chilling specificity, on the laminated surface of a single menu. The poison had travelled with him. Each contaminated site mapped a step in Litvinenko's final hours. The evidence showed he was not poisoned just once, but had been exposed multiple times. The polonium was a persistent shadow, clinging to everything he touched after those initial meetings. For the first time, investigators could see the invisible journey of the toxin across the city, a radioactive breadcrumb trail left by the assassins. The radioactive trail didn't end in London. It snaked across borders, carried by the suspects as they travelled. British Airways jets that had shuttled between Moscow and Heathrow now sat grounded on tarmacs, their cabins silent. Radiation detectors swept over seats, armrests and overhead bins, their meters spiking where the men had sat. The poison had become an airborne passenger. In Hamburg and London, hotel rooms where Lugovoy and Kovtun had stayed were sealed off. Forensic teams in protective suits moved through the spaces, their wipes collecting invisible particles from bathroom sinks, bed linens and telephones. Each positive swipe confirmed a chilling fact. The men had handled the polonium repeatedly, contaminating everything they touched for days before and after the meeting at the Pine Bar. The map of contamination grew stranger. Radiation flared at a soccer stadium in London, where one suspect had watched a match, and inside a Mayfair office building, where they had held a business meeting. Polonium had been deposited in public spaces, a toxic signature left carelessly behind. Investigators now faced a sprawling, invisible crime scene scattered across 2 countries. The forensic map of contamination was complete. In May of 2007, the British Crown Prosecution Service announced murder charges against Andrei Lugovoy and Dmitry Kovtun. The evidence was unprecedented. A radioactive timeline of their movements from hotel rooms to airplanes, all pointing to that single teapot in the Pine Bar. Britain formally requested their extradition from Russia. Moscow's response was swift and absolute. The Russian government refused the extradition requests, declaring the men would not be sent to face trial. Lugovoy, now a member of the Russian parliament, dismissed the charges as politically motivated. The legal door slammed shut, leaving British authorities with a detailed case file and 2 named suspects permanently beyond their reach. The quest for answers shifted to a public inquiry. For years, hearings examined classified intelligence and witness testimony behind closed doors. Finally, in January 2016, the inquiry's chairman, Sir Robert Owen, delivered his conclusion. The assassination of Alexander Litvinenko was probably approved by the head of the FSB and by President Vladimir Putin himself. The public inquiry closed its files, but the forensic blueprint remained. Investigators had proven that polonium-210, for all its invisibility, could not hide. Every alpha particle emitted had left a permanent, detectable signature on surfaces it touched. From teacups to teapots, from airplane seats to bathroom drains, the poison had painted a map of its journey across London. That map forced a global recalibration. Intelligence and security services worldwide began actively monitoring for radioactive materials at borders and in major cities. Ports and airports installed new sensitive detectors capable of sniffing out alpha emitters like polonium, substances that had once slipped past standard gamma-ray scanners undetected. Litvinenko's death thus became a grim landmark. It demonstrated that a state-sponsored assassination could be executed with a rare nuclear isotope on the streets of a foreign capital. The case established that even the most exotic poisons leave a physical trail, turning every contaminated surface into silent, enduring evidence.